Hello and welcome to Theology and Time. Well, there's a lot of people talking about fake news these days. It seems that ever since Donald Trump won the presidency, there has been an uproar because the mainstream media was dead wrong about the election. And they're coming out with so many different excuses as to why, and one of them is fake news. So the mainstream media is blaming the alternative media of the YouTube as well as radio to making up stories or making up news, fake news, to promote Donald Trump and to make Hillary Clinton look bad. Now we know that mainstream media is, majority of them, if not all of mainstream media, is liberal. So in order to get somewhat of a conservative news, you have to go on YouTube or different radio stations. And I think the mainstream media is pretty upset that they're losing their audience to different news sources. Now, in a mainstream Christianity, I think it's the same way. You see, the mainstream Christianity have come up with a solution to deal with those who may disagree with what they say about Jesus Christ, and it's called false teachers. False teachers. So if anyone were to come out with an understanding of Scripture, of Jesus Christ, or theology that is different than the mainstream Christianity, you are labeled false teacher. Now they could hold up a Bible and quote some verses and to say, here you go, you're a false teacher, so therefore I'm not going to talk to you ever again. Well, the mainstream media, however, doesn't have that kind of control. So I'm thinking that it is good that the mainstream media doesn't have that control and that we have other outlets, other sources that the mainstream media might call it fake news, but it really isn't. And I'm sure there are a lot of fake news that are out there, but I think we have enough common sense to figure out what is real and what is not, or we should able to be. In Christianity, there are places, websites, or different denominations that talks about theologies that might be different than the mainstream Christianity. But once again, hey, they're just false teachers, so don't listen to them. And strange enough, majority of Christians do not listen to any other theology. So why is it that we believe that the mainstream media is telling the truth? Especially when it comes to hell. Do you really believe that God created human beings to be tortured and to be burned, and burned alive, that is, without ever really being burned, forever and ever and ever? And even if it doesn't make that much of a sense, we believe it anyways because we hear it over and over and over again. Now I want you to watch this video real quickly, and I'm sure you heard something like this many times before if you've ever been to church.
Okay, but I think, man, even if there's one person in this room who, if you were to die today and you have never confessed Jesus, you've never really lived for him, then you are going to spend an eternity apart from God. And I just began dwelling on that because I can't imagine that. I can't imagine being apart from God forever and then in a place of torment, what this place calls, which is a lake that burns with fire and sulfur. And it's not an immediate end. It's this torment day and night forever and ever. It says where you'll want to die, but you're not allowed to.
Now, did you hear that? Basically, it's a sermon that we heard many times. That if you do not believe in Jesus Christ, y'all gonna go to hell. You want to die, but you cannot die. But does the Bible really say that if people do not believe in Jesus Christ, they're going to go to a place called hell where they'll suffer forever and ever and ever? You see, we never question it because the mainstream Christianity doesn't want anybody to talk about it because it is set, it is settled. Yes, there is a hell, and if you don't believe in Jesus, everybody's going to go there. Everyone who does not believe in Jesus Christ is going to go there. Did anybody ever question, where do you get this idea from? Right? Because you would think that the Bible will be filled with the information about hell. Filled with them. If going to hell or heaven is such an important subject, then maybe Jesus and his disciples and the New Testament writers would have written about it all everywhere. I mean, if it is that important and you only know the truth about heaven and hell, wouldn't you write? If you're writing to your friends, your parents, wouldn't you write and say, hey, by the way, Jesus said there is a place called hell if you don't believe in him, and describe what the hell is going to look like. So you would think that a lot of passages in the New Testament is going to be talking about hell. We'll take a look. So you type in the word hell, and few verses come up. Few, not a lot. So I'm going to click on the word hell here. Now, this video is not to say there is or there isn't hell. Now, I could make a video about that and tell you what I think. But I'm just trying to say what is fake news and what seems to be real. And we should ask that question when it comes to Christian theology. So here we go. The word hell that Jesus used, in more cases than not, is called Gehenna. All right? Gehenna. Now, all in New Testament, Jesus, all in New Testament, the word Gehenna is used 12 times. That is it. 12 times. Now, if you look, it says right here, Matthew uses it 7 times, Mark and Luke 3, Luke 1. But since Mark and Luke is talking about Jesus, how Matthew is, all the verses in Mark is the same thing repeated from Matthew. So if you go to, click on that and go to Matthew, look at the verses that talks about hell. In the Sermon on the Mount, he says basically this: if your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out, throw it in from you. It is better for you to lose one part of the body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. Now, Jesus just says hell. Now, Jesus was a Jew. Did the Jews believe in hell like how Christians, we do today? And the answer is, of course not. No, they didn't. So if Jesus is talking to the Jews mostly and used the word Gehenna to be hell, shouldn't he at least explain? He never does. Because he expects people to know what Gehenna is. So you look up the word Gehenna, and the definition is, hell is a place of future punishment called Gehenna, or Gehenna of life. Now, where did that definition come from if it's not just a Christian theology? Jews don't believe in that. Because Gehenna, as it says right here, it says it's a valley of Hinnom south of Jerusalem, about 4 or 5 miles away from Jerusalem. It's a place that you could go visit today. It is a place of filth and dead animals, it says. City were cast out and burned, a fit symbol for wicked. It's a symbol for wicked and their future destruction. It was a place, if you go to the Old Testament, you find out it was a place where, a sacrifice to an idol was done, and they would actually sacrifice human beings there as well. At least that's what I remember. But that place is a wicked, wicked place. It's not just like a cemetery. It's a valley. It's a huge place. All right? And you could find out a lot about it. Just look up the word Gehenna. So if Gehenna is a literal place, a place of sorrow, a place of filth, place of wickedness, then you could say this: it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into this wickedness. Jesus is using the location as a symbol, as a way of saying that place is wicked, that place is terrible, a lot of pain and suffering because of what they have done there. So it is better for you to save yourself. Save yourself. That's what he's saying. He's not introducing a place of hell where we are going to go. There's no way you could use this verse and say, yes, there is a place that we're going to go. It's not it. Same thing with chapter 5:22. It's the same thing. Chapter 10, verse 28. Do not fear those who kill the body but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him who has destroyed both soul and body in hell. And somebody who could put you in that wickedness, not just physically, but mentally as a whole being. It's not talking about somebody who's going to be able to just kill you and then put you in a place called hell where you'll burn forever and ever and you'll suffer, which doesn't make any sense in the first place, because when you die, your body is gone. So how do you burn forever? Right? So it's an analogy. It's talking about how terrible it is for us to live a life without God. Now, you could still believe in hell and heaven and stuff like that, but you can't use these verses to back it up. And then he tells the scribes and the Pharisees, right? And this is a great verse. Matthew chapter 23, verse 15. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel on sea and land, because they're missionaries, to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Meaning, the missionaries make the people twice as worse than the Pharisees, the religious people. That's all it means. That you're turning people more wicked. It's not talking about hell, how we understand hell to be. So why is it that we continue to think, or that the mainstream Christianity don't even explain hell? They just go ahead and say, yeah, there's a place, and y'all gonna go there if you don't believe in Jesus Christ. Gehenna, hell, is not a place that you go afterwards. It's a literal place in Jerusalem that you could go visit. Now, having said that, question is, how many times does, let's say, if you look at all the verses that use the word Gehenna, James is the only one that uses it once. Just once. Just once. I mean, if it was so important, wouldn't he say it at least zillion times? And then he says this, and the tongue is a fire. He's talking about our tongue, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body, sets on fire on the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell. By hell, a wicked place. Right? That's all it is saying. That we should control our tongue, because if we don't, it could bring about a lot of wickedness, which is definitely true. James talks about it once. Now, majority of the New Testament, the epistles that is written by Paul. Paul. I say about 75-80% of the New Testament is written or influenced by Paul. How many times does Paul talk about hell? How many times? How many times? Look at this. 0. 0. Do you understand? Now you notice the word hell, Gehenna, it says that book of Revelation doesn't even talk about it. Why is that? Because we know Revelation talks about hell, and we think Revelation talks about hell a lot, but they really don't too much either. The word that Revelation uses a lot, only 4 times, which is not a lot, right, is using the word Hades. It's not the same word. It says definition, name of Hades, or Pluto, the god of the lower region. That's all it means. It's like a grave, death, hell, lower region. Maybe it has is similar to the word Sheol from the Old Testament, where the word Sheol basically means void or death or grave. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one of them according to their deeds. Then death and Hades were thrown in the lake of fire. Death and Hades were thrown into fire. Now what does that mean, the second death? Maybe it's the end of sin and death. Right? A lot of people would argue about that. So it's not talking about sin and death in a sense of you're going to go to hell and burn there forever and ever. That's not what it means. Now, when we listen to Francis Chan talking about the lake of fire, so when you look up the word lake of fire, it only happens a few times, 3-4 times, and it's on the end of book of Revelation. Now, once again, I don't like Revelation, Maybe it belongs in the Bible, maybe it doesn't, because some other scholars doesn't think it belonged there. But lake of fire, it's not hell. It's not Hades. It's just lake of fire. It's an analogy to talk about how death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire, second death of the lake of fire. And it could also, as some have argued, that God is a consuming fire, that it is going to be judged by God. Right? You could say that. Why does it have to be a literal place called hell? Now, do you believe in hell? Do you believe in heaven? Why? Because the mainstream Christians have told you there is a place? Did you look it up yourself? Look at the history of it and see. Now, there is another word, hell, that is used by Peter. And that word is a totally different one too. That one is not Gehenna. It's not Hades. I believe it's called Tata-o-o, which is more like a Greek mythology, or was it Persian mythology? Hell. It's not even biblical. It's not even Jewish. Jesus didn't even talk about it. Right? And it's a place, Peter says, where the angels go to be judged by God. Angels, not human beings. So that hell has nothing to do with us. However, I have heard many sermons in the past where people say, the preachers, the mainstream Christianity will say, yes, hell is a place that was originally designated for the angels, the fallen angels. But as they're going to this place, hell, they're going to try to take as many people, human beings, as possible. So there's going to be a lot of people in hell, human beings, even though it wasn't intended to be. And everybody just believes it. Now, if you look at the history of the hell, not many people talk about it. The church fathers don't talk about too much of it, except Tertullian talks a little bit about hell. It gets very popular around 350 or so. I think Augustine wrote a book called City of God, Heaven and Hell, kind of an understanding of it. But the understanding of Jesus descending into hell to preach to those who were in hell, literally, I think it comes to us from Gospel of Nicodemus, which we believe, a lot of people believe, was written like 400 or 500 AD, which came into the church and started talking about heaven and hell and created all this crazy thing about hell. So if you also go to Eastern Orthodox Church, they don't talk about hell too much either, if at all. Do they talk about damnation? Why? Because it's different theology. So why is it that if someone like me or others disagree with the mainstream Christianity, all of a sudden everybody just points to the Bible and says, false teacher? Well, did you look into the scripture? Did you look into the history? Did you listen to the fact that the word hell in English has three different words, is a three different word in Greek? Did you know that? And each one of them means something different. You can't combine all three together plus some other writings and then try to create something and bring fear into people so that somehow, I don't know, church could grow or whatnot. I mean, some people literally are passionate about it because maybe that's all we've been taught. We just go along with the mainstream Christian theology. So when it comes to fake news, I don't think it is good that the mainstream media is trying to get the social media and even the government to come and decide which is real and which is fake news and to censor. When it comes to mainstream Christianity, I'm suggesting, I am asking for the mainstream Christians, especially the leaders and the preachers, to come out and tell the Christians to have an open mind to different theologies, different understandings. Let us debate to see what is real and what is not. We all say Jesus came, right, for the truth, and we shall know the truth, and truth will set you free. How can one thing be true if no one is allowed to debate and to talk. I think it would be much healthier for Christianity if we were to just open the idea, or at least an idea, that there may be a different interpretation, there are different theologies, but there is one Lord. Wouldn't that be much better? And we could have a nice, great conversation. Now, if you believe that I am wrong, then let's talk about the verses. Let's talk about the verses and try to figure out, right, in a very logical, loving way. Wouldn't that be great? I hope you don't think this is fake news. May God bless you. And I'll definitely see you next time. Cheers.